Balkrishna Doshi and his architectural journey.
School of architecture, I never took salary that I got 800 rupees. I never took it home for all those 20 years when I was in the beginning of my career. It's a temple. How can you do it? How can you take money from the temple? I would like to take you from a path which normally people are not supposed to travel, or they don't travel. This is a straight way to go, this one is another way to go. But I have to find whether there is a way to come down. The whole idea is, this jungle has been made by us. Before it was all barren. So we talk about architecture. I think architecture is a matter of transformation. Transformation of all odd situations into a favorable condition. All these mounds were made by me standing on the rooftop there. This structure is concrete, but completely free from there and inserted like this. We would overflow the water and the water would come down and cascade into the ponds, and it looked like a nice boat.
You see it as all Indian, and yet you can analyze this building as much as modernist, with exposed concrete, with geometric forms, with conscious reuse of modular scale in vertical dimension, to anything that you can see it as. But yet in a sense it's truly an Indian. So again, the kind of way it has been able to demonstrate this idea of contemporary with traditional, and without replicating the form or the diagram or the elements, purely in its spirit, the soul, that it does these both. So I think it's in that light I do find this project to be of great value.
If it is a sustainable building, it should use everything which is available from almost west. And all this is done by the local people. This is all done. I told them just do what you like. I gave them pieces, so they wanted, this is Amitabh Bachchan for them. I was thinking, why should an office be like an office? Why should I not only have an office only for myself but close at 5? Why can't it become a public space? So you're talking about public and private, form versus formlessness, growth and other things, and yet it has to be a studio. And then you talk about partly above, partly below ground. All this happened, and that happened because that building was there. I had made this building by chance, the extension. That building happened because I had to make this into non-agricultural land. And so I had to find something. Yeah. So the neighbor had only curved sheets. So I said, overnight, let me make the curved sheets and make a plan. So I made a plan and I made the roof and I got my stamp. But then I said, my God, how nice this is. So always there are clues. We must be aware. I went to the School of Architecture in Bombay, JJ, by chance.
After my parents and grandparents, if an individual has had a role to play in my life, it's Doshi.
I've learned from Doshi the way to be yourself, always.
I am not an architect, that's the problem. I am not an architect. No. For me, it's a search. It's only search. Search for that unknown which I have not known. Neither I know how it will manifest. That's actually the essence of my work. It begins somewhere, ends somewhere, and in that process I grow and the work grows. And we both grow together.
He's able to talk to any level of person.
He's a mark.
I will say like this, he's Baniya architect, Baniya kalakar.
The little I know about Doshi's past, inside that man is a sensibility that combines heroism with modesty. You know, you can't help feeling that he truly cares. He has a deep sensibility for the people that might live or work or occupy a building. He's thinking about the humanity of the problem rather than the grandeur of his own ego.
I see a seed in your talking about your grandfather making furniture. 2 days ago I was reading a small quotations of Charles Zane's. In one of the 100 quotations he said a chair is a house, it's architecture, but I can take a chair and hold it. And I love that about that architecture. So I'm just thinking maybe your great-grandfather was an architect, but an architect of chairs. And I'm just saying something in that making things and sitting on it and using it like a house actually might have
No, it's
been
not.
in the roots.
It is absolutely true. My father made a cupboard. Because he made a cupboard in such a way that if common people were using it and they have no other place in the house, what will they do? So he made a cupboard with 2 shutters which opened first, and then the 2 shutters had 2 other shutters which opened like this and made a privacy. So the ladies could change their dress inside with the mirrors and then you close. So he made a room out of the room. So what you are saying is,
I can even see your wing doors, your pivoting doors in that cupboard then.
So Gufa was done with an idea. This is Stonehenge, circles there. Hussain told me, I said, I'll give you a challenge. I'll make a building where you will have to invent new paintings. So he says, go ahead. So this is how he did. And then you can see it looks like an animal form. So one begins to work with form, light, space. Those are constants anyway. So when this was being done, it was made, and then I was thinking of brick. Then V.D. Joshi told me that why are you doing this? Why don't you use the structure like the soap bubbles, surface tensions? And then the building changed and the building began to twist. You can see these, they were flat before, then they began to take a new dynamism next. And so this is how it began. This is the plan. Again, these kind of things, begin to remind, or they come from the primordial sense of movement, space, hierarchies of spaces, etc. This is Hussain. Next. And the building was done. It was done in ferrocement. So while it is being done in ferrocement and when they have to cast, they had to have these ribs so that people could climb on this. And I like the ribs and so I have left them there. Otherwise one could have cut them. And then these are the little lights. I wrote the stories on this, which I'm sure you know. And one writes stories because that's the only way you begin to convince yourself, a client, and then it becomes even better than what it is because it takes away the tinge of that rigid dress, rigid protocol. Next. The Rabaris, these are the local people were brought from the villages because they only could make ferrocement things. And then this is the way Hussain drew that cobra, and then we added that cobra. And it's a story of the Seshnag and how this ritual takes place. These rituals are actually true. These are from the local areas from Rajasthan, and then how they 9 days of program, and then how they make the wall alive. So when I'm telling you about energies, you will find in the tribal customs still today those things happening. They don't believe that the building is away from them. Building is them. It is a part of their members of the family. It's like a birth of a family member. Next. Then these roots, the China mosaic. This, incidentally, I got these saucers and cups from a factory, so I had to pay only the transport. But when I had to make these cups, I had to make 10,000 saucers. That is the only money I had to spend. But what happens is when you use this compared to the China mosaic in the office, China mosaic is flat, the saucer is like this, so it looks like the scales of the animal. Next. And then the quality of light. While this was being done, I had to do this with sand. This is all complete circles, ovals. And this sand became my base to understand. So while on the site, I had to walk there and see how you feel, and then make this, and then this turning came from the sculptures of Varaha Avatar. Varaha Avatar, I had seen Vishnu coming out, Varaha. and then the sculpture in Khajuraho, and how the whole carving was made, as if that is coming out. So images are found anywhere. Just look for it, and they will come to you. All over is full of images, and then they come, and that is how I work on the buildings. Next. And then Hussein made these cutouts, so light changes throughout the day, and the space becomes very different. Next. This was done when we had artificial light, just to understand the space. And this was done, when we had to finish it, I had to use a bamboo sticks to really make the shape so that the curvatures become correct. It was designed on a computer and constructed by the tribals. Next. So this is the kind of reflections, shadows. Next. And then this is how it looks. Next. See the kind of material you get, the textures. Next. Mind you, there are no parameters to this. Architecture really is celebration. So after that myth which was written, Mrinalini, Sarabhai and Mallika made a show for this, and they danced on the rooftops and evoked that whole idea on the opening day. Today, children go up, they slide, old people come and sit around, and this has become possible. It has become a participatory building. Buildings have to participate throughout. Hussein, I'm very glad that he mentioned that process is important. Yeah. The end result is of no consequence, because again he is highly part of the Indian philosophy here. He is from here. So he can only think about the process. Other people think of the end results. But actually the end product is not as exciting as the process is. How will you enjoy the food if you are not aware about how it was cooked and how everything was brought together and put together and done? I think this is very important. But we never have time for this. We are actually interested in conclusions. Summary, of notes. In Gunwan Bhai's house, Hussein used to come often. And one day we met, and he says, "Oh, ये बहुत गर्मी है, कैसे होता है?" I said, क्या करे? तो ये मकान तुम ऐसे ही बनाते हो, गर्म हो जाते हो? मैंने कहा नहीं, हो सकता है, अंडरग्राउंड भी हो सकता है। हो सकता है, मैंने कहा, that is long back. Then 25 years later he comes back again. I used to meet him often. He would come home and this and that. Then he says, मुझे अभी वो हैदराबाद में किया, कलकत्ता में किया, मुझे यहाँ गैलरी बनाना है. And so I said, जगह तो मिलेगी, चलो देखते हैं. So we saw the thing, and then as usual he had a press conference and he says, I'm going to make here a gallery. तो मैंने कहा नहीं, गैलरी क्यों बनाएंगे, अंडरग्राउंड बनाएंगे, गुफा बना देंगे. तो बोलते हाँ गुफा अच्छा है, करो गुफा करेंगे. But I said, I'm going to challenge you, you can't paint. You will have to invent something. I said, you can only invent because you have the ability to invent. So I said, I'm going to challenge myself and I will challenge you.
When everything was complete, when I said these outer surface, looks beautiful, there must be something. And why not have a snake, like make it more, sensuous everything? Because all those they're like a breast of the earth, So, and a little like a snake entwined. So I got up and I drew just freehand like that, without showing the face, and you see the snake going on. Otherwise it would be a pretty thing. So this gave a little,
When I made a model, I shook the model. I said, I don't like going straight. So these things became like that, And then I said, that's how it should be. So the thrust changed, that it was designed on a computer. So first time in my life or anywhere, as I know, a completely sustainable building. This is saucers. Black saucers I got made, 10,000 for Cobra. So the myth became here integrated part of the whole story.
His own personal experiences would have also, I think, contributed. And he was constantly traveling, constantly sketching, looking at places in India and abroad. There's a very open-minded approach to architecture, whether it is in India or elsewhere. But whatever he was impressed and inspired by somehow remained as something in his memory, and which has affected a lot of the work later. So that we can see from the late 70s onwards, Doshi trying to create a distinctive language which takes of the best of both his masters, but is his own.
Now this architecture, particularly, I was telling Doshi, this is a miracle. And why is it not repeating? He says, it's just because it was a miracle. Because you must get a client and a function that is not defined. Function is not defined. There is a gallery to meditate. Now galleries, you just go to see things. But here in this gallery, you can meditate over things like that.
You know, if you meet a person, there are various ways you can greet the person. You may shake hand, you will say namaskara, or you may embrace. So he's building, you find all these four phenomena. See Indology building, it's a landscape and it just stands out there. I'll say it just does namaskar or something like that. See, I am here, it's virtually shake hand. I mean, see landscape and the kind of building, just meeting each other, again goes back. It doesn't enter the mystery. But if you see a Sangha, and particularly the Gufa, I think this building is completely rooted into the ground, and virtually it's like a tree. It's drawing its nourishment from inside. It's just going. That also embracing. That building embraces the, showing this tremendous intimacy. It's a virtual marriage between the land and the building. So I think this is all. It doesn't mean one is good again. I mean, there are three ways of meeting friends. They meet in various ways.
This is like actually the real Varaha Avatar. Varaha Avatar is the one where the Vishnu goes down to find that Rakshasa, because Indra's wife was taken by him. And I remembered that and I said, I want to do that, so that we separate. So this goes below, no? So you get the sense. And then this whole idea, as I said, platforms, steps, walls, water body, and then the level. That is how Sangat emerged. Next. So I made these sketches, again influenced by Khan in terms of drawing. You pick up from anybody. You should not feel shy. You have to become a robber of the first kind. And then you must be skillful enough to make it your own. Picasso, for example, Picasso saw all the artists' great work and they were his friends. But after some time, the friends, when Picasso would visit them, would hide the drawings, because the next morning he would have done better than them. And that is the skill you must learn. You have to be a sharpshooter and learn that game. So this is how Sangat happened, with proportions, So one has to make many models, study them, put them together. Next. And then Sangat was a period when I was asking about life, form, formlessness, structure, relationships. You know, when you go and travel in India, you find all kinds of variations in a building plan. And even the movements become meandering, that you go like this, turn around, go up, but then that is not the route, then you go by another route, and really the real route is somewhere else. These are life experiences, questions there, and then one works out a building, and eventually the technique and structures would work. But these are the kind of things one has to draw, one has to get them there and put them together. Next. Two things are there. Functions are obligatory. Working of those functions is obligatory, like kitchen, bathroom, staircase, steps, rooms, table, light, they will work. But what we don't talk and what the client will never talk is these things. The pleasure, the energy, next. The gardens, the kind of informal spaces which induce function, next. The kind of activities that go in there which can be changed anytime. We used to have here people to sing. You remove all this and it becomes a studio. My wife, when I was doing this building, we had not much money, and I said, let me try this building. So while I did this, she says, you're spending money. I said, if it doesn't work, I will have it for a disco. It's a very good place for disco with all kinds of variations there. Next. And so you get the up and down, you get spaces, you get narrow space, but always, these other concerns are constant. The light, the space, the structure, the kind of movement, and the quality of light. So this is not what one should talk. One should talk about life all the time. Architecture will happen by itself. Next. Then the structure, for example, what happens is very often when we do building, we are predetermined. These stones which you see here, I had bought them when we were doing Bangalore job, and I liked this granite stone, and they were lying there because I could not make them straight. Every fellow came with a chisel. That was not possible because the chisel wouldn't work. Then came my daughter's wedding, and we wanted to finish this building so we can use these steps, etc. Then I said, let me finish it. So I put them together and then made some leaves and patterns. Sometimes by chance you discover things. So don't get hooked up only with one idea. Keep it and see whether something else can happen. So when I was doing the Management Institute, my reference was Fatehpur Sikri, the Madurai temple, the corridors, the courts, the informality, the kind of formality there, the relationships, growth over time. Other thing, while I was doing this, I had done many institutions, and I found no institution happens immediately. A director comes, he makes a big plan, the second director comes, he cuts into half, the third one comes and he says, what the other fellow has done is not right, change it. So it is uncertainty is an Indian character. Now monsoon is coming, we are not sure whether it will be full or not. We are an agrarian society, the uncertainty is there. So rivers go down and up, so ghats are required. No other country has ghats. But we have ghat because we think river is sacred, so we go to the sacred. So if you look at all this, you will find very funny situations in India and very exciting. And so while you look at this, you make a plan which is open-ended. So first time this was built with this much area. The next director came and he says, I want to change, so he changed this. Then this classroom which has come here was already there. A library was small, it became twice or three times bigger. All these things happened. But I said, I learned from Madurai and other places some lessons. And I told them that I don't want to look at the building at all. I said architecture from outside would not exist. This was in the late 70s and early 80s. I said it is only in the experience. So architecture is in experience. Architecture is when you move and when you don't know the building but you feel yourself. It is like saying when you move into architecture building, you must become more and more yourself. And this is what it is. Next. So when I did this, there were courtyards, and then this was all pergolas because then from Lal Bagh area, I had found about gardens. I said eventually all these places should be full of garden, and no building is more than 3 stories. It's of stone because it's a local material. And as a result, what happened is today it has become one of the most important management institutions in marketing. This building has become their unique selling point. It's nothing to do with me. It is to do with the people there who created that kind of environment. Next. So these corridors, architecture incidentally, as a building is static, but the way the sun comes in, way the sun changes its shadows every day, it becomes dynamic. Not only that, but when the creepers grow, the nagar, it even becomes more dynamic. And when you meet students there and you meet them by chance, it becomes living. So architecture has all these phases. So don't think that once you have done it, it's finished. It's like us. We have been growing like this, and changes take place inside us, knowingly, unknowingly. And I think this is what the essence is. Next. And so landings become important. Big staircases become important. Changing of light becomes important. Next. So there are these routes. You can see this route here with the garden. Other route is of different kind. A third route is different. Fourth is different. And the other one is another difference here. So you can do many ways. And I think many experiences make things richer. And so what it does is, students also like to go out. So when you are there for a long time, whether it's a house, like the old statement, house is a small city and city is a big house. The moment you think like this, all of a sudden you begin to see the dynamics of a living room and a bedroom and a kitchen, and then the people and number of people. So scale is very important, but also the way you relate them and how you intersperse them. Next. And you get courts, and the courts continue, gardens happen, and eventually you get variety of things happening. And mind, there's only 2 materials, stone and concrete, and a stone, kota stone or the tandoor stone. So materials are not important. External elevation is not so important. It is the inside that we talk about. And in fact, when you meet a friend, you ask him, how does he look? You won't know unless you are in love or something. But otherwise, you are really only remembering what he is inside. Your identity is inside you. That's why the fashion is very important today, because identity is not there. Next. Then you see these courtyards and the corridors and the buildings. So they go, transition is important in India. The other thing that you will look at, traditional Indian building and in building, what is happening is, Indian buildings are always porous. They are like sponge. And they move from a room to a covered veranda to open veranda to street. Similarly, they go through these phases of light and shadow. So gradual change happens into these buildings. Next. And then this is what the nature can do.
Doshi refuses to think of functions as being discrete. The Institute's activities flow freely into one another in a way that is deliberately ambiguous. The composition is distinguished by its studied contrast of regularity and irregularity. Axes are implied, denied, then rediscovered. The approach to the Institute leads up to a shallow series of steps past a misting foundation. Terraces, courts, and amphitheatres express Doshi's intentions to use open spaces to tie the entire property together as an urban complex. Material used is concrete. The walls, like those at Sangat, are covered by glazed ceramic pieces, although here the buildings stand higher. Water is an important feature descending from a misting fountain that helps to cool the air nearby. The entrance is in the lower right-hand corner of the central courtyard, approached diagonally from the angled front gate via a progression of terrace, platform and steps. Axonometric site plan. Doshi combines an irregular site with regular square forms and outside with inside space, achieving a harmonious sense of unity. The diagonal axis from the front gate to the front door allows the approaching visitor to gain a sense of the building's perspective. Given the ambitious objectives specified by the client as well as the strict laws, Mr. Doshi arrived at the following conclusion. Fashion design demands continuous innovation. For this changing environment, highly visible display and show areas are essential. Fashion shows are indeed theatrical acts with an emphasis on dramatic effects. All this implies continuous movement in space and time which must be modulated. In architectural terms, this suggests an introverted bazaar-like atmosphere enlivened by the movement of the students and the visitors. The theatrical elements suggested a series of heights. An auditorium occupies the space directly beneath the amphitheater at the left. The rest of the basement is used for car parking spaces and mechanical facilities. The front court, stipulated as the green area by the authorities, became a bazaar with opportunities for display, social gatherings, and public or semi-public activities. The sunken courtyard is in the form of a modified kund, a saucer-shaped rainwater store with water. The water channel running in the center. Regular office buildings are wedded to the irregular shape of the site, enhancing uneven natural features in the inner court, which descends in a series of stairs at the center of the plan. The picture shows the central water channel leading from building from outside in the heart of the complex. The bridge spans the area above it, linking the two main buildings. The entrance to the building is to the top of the bridge. Further to the right-hand side, we find administrative block located in the foreground of the complex with library and exhibition area at upper levels. To the left, there is a cluster grouped together to form units of classrooms, laboratories and service spaces with a common lobby. Further to the sunken courtyard is an informal amphitheater. The clusters connect to the main administrative building with a bridge overlooking the two active courtyards, which also serves to separate them visually. These are the two sections showing the two blocks joined by the bridge. The upper floors of the administration block on the left overhang the lower floors, as in the architecture of traditional Havelis. The institute has an undulated steel pergola above the internal courts as a symbolic gateway to be seen by visitors across the park as they make their way towards the entrance, where the institute showcases the fabrics produced by students during the shows. The two courtyards from the central space of the institute and have glazed corridors around them that allow a clear view of galleries, classroom clusters, administration block, library and the dormitory blocks. Mr. Doshi's concept of surrounding the court with each of the main blocks of the complex of buildings between 3 or 4 stories higher than one monolithic, massive building block gives the ensemble a less institutional aspect and was intended to replicate the feeling of a traditional chowk or mohalla and to foster a sense of community. The variety of function in each building were intended to allow each to acquire its own character, making each identifiable within a unified vocabulary.